I'm going to be very short here. I'm just getting everybody's attention. I'm going to hand the mic over to our CEO, Mehul Sangani, who's going to get the party started.
First of all, I'm going to keep my comments right now really brief, but I wanted to thank everyone for being here today. Today is a momentous day, not just for Octo, but what we think is a stake in the ground, not just here in the community, but for innovation in our ecosystem. But without further ado, I wanted to quickly introduce, I have the privilege of introducing and welcoming, our keynote guest here today, the 69th Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, the Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and our Senior Senator, United States Senator from the state of Virginia, the Honorable Senator Mark Warner.
Well, thank you, Mehul. Thank you for that introduction. You guys were both so brief. Does that mean I get to give you the whole senator speech? Let me first of all thank Mehul, congratulate you, triple hokey. How many here Virginia Tech connected? Okay, good. Do you know why I am the most famous governor ever?
Got us in the ACC.
Got us at Hokies in the ACC. That used to be a big thing. When I was governor, I'd go down through Southwest Virginia and people would come up to me and go, "You're the blankety blank Democrat, but I'm going to still vote for you because you got the Hokies into the ACC." So some things still going. I mean, today's a good day for me, good day obviously for Octo, and we're going to cut the ribbon here at oLabs in a moment. I was just a little bit earlier at Interos over in Arlington, where they are doing supply chain mapping, something very important. Mehul and I were talking about the fact that we really do think the entrepreneurial ecosystem that some of us have been working on literally for, I think I first started back in the 80s, so how old I am, but for 20, 30 years, has made great strides. A lot of the innovation that's going on in our country isn't all happening out in the valley. A whole lot of it is happening right here in the DMV, and particularly emphasize the V part of the DMV. I think we've had some great wins. I mean, I was really happy that after a year of work, we got Boeing to announce they're bringing their corporate headquarters here. That coming on top of Amazon, coming on top of Nestle's, coming on top of Northrop Grumman. The list goes on and on. And one of the things I think you guys also realize is that there's a key startup and mid-sized company ecosystem as well. And really appreciate all that Octo does in terms of helping our federal government. And Lord knows we need help. They'll ask me, what was I thinking about these days as chairman of the Intelligence Committee? These are enormously challenging times. I think most of us have been enormously, I hope we all have been enormously moved by the courage of the Ukrainian people, President Zelensky's leadership, the fact that even though there was a bump in the road or two, we did stand up in a broadly bipartisan way and try to make sure that we get the Ukrainians the arms they need to take on Russia. When you actually add up this package plus the previous package, combine that with our European friends, finally, who've kind of gotten off their duffs and chipping in as well, we're at about $50 billion of aid to Ukraine since the beginning of the year. When you take that vis-a-vis the overall Russian defense budget at only $66 billion, we've now given the Ukrainians the tools they need to compete. And what I think is most powerful, and I hope that we all, again, regardless of where we fall on the political spectrum in this country, I hope we always take a moment and reflect. The last couple of years have been hard in this country. Where I worked is pretty dysfunctional. I was on the floor of the Senate January 6th when something happened I never thought I'd see. People trying to overthrow a duly elected government in our country. We had COVID, and I think there's probably some of us over the last few years have wondered, will that notion of liberal democracy, what we have, right of a free press, right to agree to disagree, right to have your votes counted, will that system succeed? And what I think is so important about what's happening in Ukraine and Russia is literally the people of Ukraine are voting with their lives to say, we so want what you have and take for granted in America every day. And I think that sends a very powerful message. For me, at least, it should clear up any of the kind of moral ambiguity about who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. I mean, Russia clearly is acting with a level of aggression that is unprecedented. And I believe we need to do all we can to make sure that our Ukrainian friends are successful. And to have the fact that we now have a united Europe, the fact that Finland and Sweden are trying to join NATO, the fact that the Swiss, when the Swiss decide to take sides, you know you got a pretty clear challenge. And while that is the immediate focus, what I'm most interested in, and have been for some time, which is I think where the real contest lies going forward, and why what is so important that Octo does, particularly as it helps in our IC community, and that is the challenge with China. And let me be clear, when I mention China, I think it's terribly important, policymakers. If you ever talk about China, you got to make clear, at least in my mind, our beef is with the Communist Party of China. It's with Xi Jinping. It is not with the Chinese people. It is not with the Chinese diaspora. It is not a smokescreen, the way some political figures do, to practice hate or bigotry against the enormous contributions that Chinese Americans make to our country and the Chinese diaspora makes to countries all over the world. But we are facing in China a challenge unlike anything we've seen in the past. I grew up, I'm old enough to remember the whole challenges with the Soviet Union. The Soviets, the Russians, they were a military challenge, an ideological challenge, but they were never really an economic challenge. I mean, the size of the Russian economy is smaller than Texas. Some of you guys know my background was as a VC, and prior to that I was in the wireless business. What kind of was the wake-up call for me was when we saw what China had done with Huawei and in 5G. Or suddenly, an area where, like in so many technology areas, post-Sputnik and ways, we invented most of the next levels of technological innovation. And even if we didn't invent, we in this country got to set the rules, the standards, the protocols, and procedures. And I think we kind of fell asleep at the switch into the 90s, early 2000s. There wasn't really another great nation threat. We obviously had enormous threats around counterterrorism, but it was not an economic and technological challenge the way China presents. 5G was the first time where not only you had a national security threat in Huawei, but you also had the CCP basically writing the rules of a cutting-edge technology. And we are slowly starting to wake up to that challenge. I think we saw it during COVID when we realized how many of our supply chains, we had very little ability to oversee that supply chains, why some of the work at Interos in terms of going upstream is so important. It's why we need to have in America the kind of discipline that China has put forward of identifying key technologies where we will make the investments in the way we did in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and frankly it fell off a little bit. Right now, there is a bipartisan effort that we are this close, and in Congress this close can mean still another few weeks, of making the first kind of significant investment in a technology area around semiconductors, $52 billion in terms of the CHIPS bill, to make sure that we continue to build fabrication facilities here in this country, that we make the next generation investment in 5G and beyond, open radio access network. I don't want to nerd out on for all of you for non-tech telecom guys, but my sense is that kind of bipartisan investment we're going to have to make, not just in semiconductors or in 5G, but in AI, in quantum, in synthetic biology, area by area. And one of the things that I've been working on a lot is, one, how do we, as a government, and I know Octo does mostly work helping folks in government, and clearly the help to the intel community is very, very valuable. But one of the things that we've got to get our stuff together, maybe a more politically correct way to say on film, you ask China, they will outline the 5 or 6 or 7 key technologies that they see where they want to dominate. You ask the US government, you get one list from the CIA, you get another list from the ODNI, you get a third list from Commerce, you get a fourth list from OSTP, and we don't even have a consensus on where we ought to be in the game. And one of the things that I hope to try to spend a lot of time working on has nothing to do, again, left, right, or Democrat, Republican, but how do we put together the capital stack in a way that on a public sector and private sector basis, we invest in the kind of cutting edge technology that you guys have here. I mean, one of the things I'm so excited about when we cut the ribbon in a moment with oLabs is the fact that you've got a mid-sized government contractor inviting in other companies to work side by side so that we can do that joint innovation. That is a very, very cool concept. And what I want to try to do is take the things at the federal level, though, the DARPAs, ARPAs, InQtels, DIUs, put them together, figure out where we can add additional funding in the capital stack to make sure that successful entities like yours, who grew from small to mid-size, can grow to the next level, that it doesn't take, if you're a new, innovative government technology enterprise, it doesn't take you 5 years and $1 gazillion of lobbyists to actually get into the procurement chain. That still is way too hard and way too complicated, because I think the kind of innovation that you are demonstrating here and oLabs will present to the government community is critically, critically important. I hope you'll count me as an ally so that we can see a lot more of this taking place. And final comment I'd make is just that, I go back again to where I started, which is these are challenging times. But I don't think when you look at the courage of the Ukrainian people at any moment in time that we ought to forget. The fact is, we live in the greatest country in the world. With all our flaws, we have the best system. It is worth fighting for. It is worth defending. It is worth making sure that we bring the innovation to the rest of the world in the kind of work that you guys all here do day in and day out. Thank you all very much, and thanks for having me. And that was the short version.